Welcome to the 5-Minute Warfare podcast from 5minutewarfare.com, where we dive into history's most pivotal battles and military strategies in around 5 minutes. If you enjoy the show and would like to support us, please consider buying us a coffee. Head on over to 5minutewarfare.com/coffee to see how. This is episode 23, The English Civil War, Muskets, Pikes, and the Fall of a King. The English Civil War, fought between 1642 and 1651, was one of the most significant conflicts in British history. It was a war not just of muskets and pikes, but of ideology, governance, and the very nature of power. At its heart was the struggle between King Charles I and Parliament, a contest over authority that would ultimately lead to the execution of a monarch and the temporary abolition of the monarchy itself. It was a war that divided families, communities, and the nation, leaving a lasting impact on England's political and military landscape. The roots of the conflict stretched back long before the first shots were fired. Charles I, who ascended the throne in 1625, was an ardent believer in the divine right of kings, insisting that his authority came directly from God and was not subject to parliamentary approval. His rule was marked by repeated clashes with Parliament over finances and governance. When Parliament refused to grant him the money he demanded, he dissolved it and ruled without it for 11 years, a period known as the personal rule. During this time, he raised funds through unpopular means, including controversial taxes like ship money, which alienated many of his subjects. Tensions escalated further when Charles attempted to impose religious reforms on Scotland, provoking the Bishops' Wars. These conflicts forced him to recall Parliament in 1640 to raise funds for his military campaigns. However, the so-called Long Parliament, determined to curb royal authority, demanded sweeping changes, including the abolition of certain taxes and the execution of the king's unpopular advisor, Thomas Wentworth, Earl of Strafford. The final breaking point came in 1642 when Charles, believing he could silence his opponents, attempted to arrest 5 leading members of Parliament. This act of blatant aggression shocked the political establishment and forced the king to flee London, marking the beginning of open conflict. With the country now divided, both sides began mustering forces. The Royalists, or Cavaliers, largely composed of aristocrats, rural landowners, and staunch supporters of the monarchy, rallied behind Charles. They were pitted against the Parliamentarians, or Roundheads, made up of Puritans, merchants, and those who sought a constitutional monarchy, or greater parliamentary control. The war was fought with muskets and pikes, with cavalry charges and artillery bombardments, as both sides struggled for dominance. The early battles, such as Edge Hill in 1642 and Marston Moor in 1644, were chaotic and indecisive. The Royalists had skilled cavalry under Prince Rupert of the Rhine, but the Parliamentarians gradually gained the upper hand, thanks in part to their disciplined new model army. Created in 1645 and led by Oliver Cromwell and Sir Thomas Fairfax, this professional force was trained, organised, and motivated by a strong sense of religious fervour. Their victory at the Battle of Naseby in June 1645 shattered the Royalist cause, and by 1646, Charles had surrendered to the Scots, who handed him over to Parliament. Despite his defeat, Charles refused to concede power. He secretly negotiated with the Scots, leading to a brief resurgence of Royalist resistance in what became known as the Second Civil War in 1648. However, this renewed conflict was swiftly crushed, and Charles was placed on trial for treason. His refusal to acknowledge the court's legitimacy sealed his fate. In a moment unprecedented in English history, Charles I was executed on the 30th of January, 1649, an event that sent shockwaves across Europe. The monarchy was abolished, and England was declared a republic, known as the Commonwealth, under Oliver Cromwell's leadership. Yet the war was not over. Royalist forces in Ireland and Scotland remained defiant, leading Cromwell to launch brutal military campaigns in both countries. His conquest of Ireland in 1649, marked by the infamous massacres at Drogheda and Wexford, left a lasting legacy of bitterness. In Scotland, the Royalists crowned Charles II, the exiled son of the executed king, as their ruler. However, Cromwell defeated him at the Battle of Dunbar in 1650, and again at Worcester in 1651, forcing Charles to flee to the continent. With this final victory, the English Civil War was effectively over, and Cromwell's rule as Lord Protector began. The aftermath of the war saw England ruled as a republic for over a decade, but Cromwell's rule became increasingly authoritarian. When he died in 1658, his son, Richard Cromwell, proved unable to maintain control, and within 2 years, the monarchy was restored. Charles II returned to England in 1660, bringing an end to the Commonwealth. However, the Civil War had fundamentally changed the nation. It established the principle that the monarch could not govern without Parliament, laying the foundations for the constitutional monarchy that would later emerge. Militarily, the conflict marked a shift from feudal levies to professional standing armies. The tactics and strategies developed during the war influenced European warfare for decades to come. Politically, it demonstrated that no ruler could rule unchallenged, reinforcing the importance of parliamentary authority. Socially, the war had lasting consequences, deepening divisions between royalists and parliamentarians, Anglicans and Puritans, and different regions of England. The English Civil War was more than a struggle for power. It was a fight over the very nature of governance. It saw the rise and fall of a king, the emergence of a new model of military organisation, and the brief but profound experiment of a republican England. Its legacy endured long after the Muskets had fallen silent, shaping the future of British politics and society in ways that still resonate today. I hope you enjoyed that episode of 5-Minute Warfare from 5minutewarfare.com. If you did, please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, and while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you would like to support us more directly, please consider buying us a coffee. Head on over to 5minutewarfare.com/coffee to see how. You may also be interested in our other 5-minute podcasts. Check them out at 5minuteproductions.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.